Cut now to 1972. I was one of the features writers on She magazine. She magazine was a monthly women's magazine that had been started by two lesbians, a lesbian couple, Nancy Spain and Joan Werner-Laurie. They were both killed in a plane crash in 1964, but the magazine went on under a heterosexual editor named Pamela Carmichael. The features editor for She was Howard Robinson, who was a flamboyant gay man, very beautiful and much admired. Pamela Carmichael rang me one day and said, "Oh, Keith, I was at dinner last night. I was sitting next to this lovely young man. He's a singer. His name's Elton John. Would you like to interview him? He lives in Virginia Water." I thought, well, okay. So I took the afternoon off work, and with my partner, my boyfriend, my putative husband, Carl, we went in a limousine, which was sent for us by the record company, which is Dick James Music, and they took us to Virginia Water, to the house that Elton lived in. It was a small mansion next door to the film director Brian Forbes and his wife Nanette Newman and their children. Elton was there on his own. There were no servants, no housekeeper. He was resplendent in his blue and white striped Swiss roll tight sleeveless jumper with tight rolled up jeans and aluminium coloured boots. He wasn't a great deal of fun. He said that he didn't laugh very much. It took a lot to make him laugh, and obviously I wasn't one of those people that made him laugh. I think the best I got was a quarter of a smile. To put it frankly, we did not get on. There was no rapport. I felt no rapport for Elton, he felt no rapport for me, but worse, I felt no rapport with his music. Up to that point, I think he'd issued about 4 albums. The first one was made for £400. The second one, Elton John it was called, was made for £7,500. So it shows that in just a brief while, Elton John exploded onto the firmament of show business. And he'd won certain awards, he'd met Princess Margaret, and he was living in a mansion in Virginia Water. Now, luckily, as I said, my partner Carl was along with me. Luckily, because he happened to be a clinical psychologist, in fact, a child psychotherapist, and he had rapport with Elton, because otherwise it would have been a silent interview, because Elton just did not respond to my questions. But Carl managed to get him to talk, and one of the things he talked about was his relationship with other musicians. He said, "I don't really have musicians as friends." He said that I don't smoke or drink, and they're always on about marijuana and how stoned they were the night before. So the only friend I've got in music is Mark Bolan, which was interesting because I'd interviewed Mark Bolan the year before, and we had a very intense, intellectual, esoteric discussion about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Elton told us that he loved animals. What we didn't realise is that most of them were stuffed. He took us into his bedroom, and the bed was a replica of the bed that Empress Josephine slept in. Yes, Empress Josephine, she of Not Tonight, Josephine. It was a massive bed with coronets and crinkles and all sorts of amazing things, but it was in the shape of a swan. Surrounding the bed was Elton's menagerie of 50 stuffed toys. And Carl ventured to ask him which was his favourite stuffed toy. And Elton said, "Oh no, I don't have a favourite. The others would be so upset if I had a favourite." There were 2 live animals. There was Bruce, the Alsatian, and Brian, the Spaniel. And Elton goes, "I must ring up Helen." He rings his publicist. "Helen, have you got that stuffed warthog and lion in the office?" "Yes." "Can you have them sent over immediately? I have to see them before I go to Los Angeles tomorrow." "But you can't just send a stuffed warthog and Helen, get a large taxi and put the warthog and the lion in the taxi and send it over immediately, right?" That was Elton. But more was to come. The door of the mansion opened, and in strode a little Scotsman, name of John Reid. Now, we knew who John Reid was. He was his manager, but we didn't realise that in fact he was more than a manager, because it was a honey, I'm home moment. And there were we, Carl and Keith, happily married, in mind only at that time, and there was Elton and John, two gay couples sitting together on the couches. And the couches were widely spaced apart, as was all the furniture. In fact, the house looked as if it had been furnished from Harrods in an afternoon. Well, amazingly, it had been. Elton said, yes, I went to Harrods one afternoon and they sent all the furniture over in 8 vans. So the whole house was instant mansion. The thing that struck me, looking back on that interview, was what would have happened if Elton had come out. If he'd have said, this is John Reid, he's my manager and he's my lover. But more to the point, what would have happened if I'd have come out and said, I'm gay, I'm writing this article, and this is my partner. Now the problem was that Carl was in a very sensitive area, working with children and adolescents, boys, and he had told me that please don't come out because it would be difficult for him. He would be in an embarrassing situation. So I was rather stymied. I felt Elton definitely wanted to come out. He talked about the girl that he nearly married. She told him she was pregnant. He cancelled the wedding 3 weeks before. He said she wasn't interested in pop music and she wasn't interested in music. She just wanted me to settle down and get a proper job. And music, he said, is my great love. He said, nothing is as important as music. But then he went all whimsical and said, well, Bernie met Maxine, all of a sudden it just happened. He said, maybe it'll happen for me like that. I just love to have children running around. So maybe there was a flash forward to the Elton John of today, married to David, furnished, with 2 sons. I found him honest. As I said, didn't get on with him. I found him taciturn and rather sulky. But he got on well with Carl because Carl was very competitive. They shared the same birthday, March the 25th. Carl was American, and Carl, of course, knew how to treat adolescents. And when we were going back in the car, the limousine waited for us and took us back to London. Carl told me who Elton really was. And when you see Rocket Man, you can see some of the things that Carl told me about Elton, which of course we couldn't print in the magazine at the time. What would have happened if we had written a coming out article? What would have happened? Would it have changed things? At that time, only Graham Chapman of Monty Python was an openly gay celebrity. David Hockney was, of course, but he lived in America. If Elton had come out as gay rather than bisexual, which he did in 1976 with Rolling Stone, would it have actually helped or hindered? I think it would have definitely hindered his career. And remember, he was just about to go to America for a second time. And in those days, in order to get a visa to America, you had to actually swear that you were not a homosexual. So he was compromised. I think that one of the sadnesses that I felt when seeing Rocket Man was that we never really heard Elton's gay voice, because it was always the words of Bernie, the heterosexual, that we heard. And I wonder if he had written the lyrics to some of his songs, whether they would have actually connected with me a little bit more on a heart level. So I'm presenting this interview, which goes under the name of Bruno Brofenbrenner, because this was a joint enterprise. In fact, if Carl hadn't been there, there wouldn't have been an interview. So this is not Keith Howes, it's Bruno Brofenbrenner speaking to you. And I think it's an interesting article. It's packed full of succulent facts about Elton. He was just about to burst into the big time. He was on his 4th album, as I said. He was about to go to Los Angeles and to become the superstar that he was and has remained. A remarkable talent, a genius, and they do say that geniuses lack agreeability. Well, I certainly found that with him. A shame that we didn't get on, because I'd have loved to have interviewed him for Gay News. In just 4 years' time, I became the features editor of Gay News and would love to have interviewed him. Ironically, I didn't interview him, but I did interview his great friend Rod Stewart, who I loved, adored. He was so cuddly, he was so tactile, he was so down to earth. None of those things I felt with Elton. But God bless him, he has given so much. He is a great entertainer and a genius. So, love you, Elton, sort of.